attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is the second webinar in the B. Guy Kelsey Programmatic Webinar series, and it is entitled Programmatic TV Comes to Local Television in 2016, Current Status and What to Expect. My name is Patrick Buno. I am the Marketing and Events Manager of B. Guy Kelsey, and I'll be running the webinar for you today. So we're going to give everyone else just a few more minutes to log on and get settled. So while they're doing that, I'm just going to go ahead and go through a few housekeeping notes for everybody really quickly. So I'd just like to start off by reminding everybody that today's webinar is being recorded and that all registered attendees will be receiving an email follow-up from BIA Kelsey with links to both the on-demand version of the webinar as well as a PDF of the slide deck. So keep an eye out for that from us tomorrow. If at any moment you experience any technical difficulties during today's webinar, please email us at webinars@biakelsey.com. We have staff that is standing by that can assist you with that. And then finally, we like to look at today's webinar as an interactive webinar. So if at any time during the presentation you have a question, please go ahead and type it into your questions box on your GoToWebinar panel, and we'll be sure to follow up with you either during the webinar or after. And then since we have so many panelists on today's webinar, if you have a specific question for one of them, if you could please just direct it or state who the question is for before you ask the question, that would really help us out. We'll make sure it goes to the right place. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to one of the moderators for today's webinar, the Managing Director of BIA Kelsey, Rick Ducey. Rick?
Patrick, thanks very much, and welcome everybody, and thank you for the panelists for joining us today. And audience, thank you for joining us as well. We've got a nice, diverse audience from different parts of local TV and programmatic, so we're kind of excited to see how this goes. On the next slide, you can see that we have a few different topics we want to focus on in terms of how we're organizing this webinar. Programmatic advertising has been around for a while on the digital side of advertising platforms in the media business, but linear TV has been getting more and more attention, and really a lot of activity has been going on in 2016. And so at BIA Kelsey, local is one of our key coverage areas, so we wanted to really dig deep to see what's going on with linear TV and programmatic. So we've undertaken a research program. As Patrick noted, we started off this year with a webinar and a report on linear TV and programmatic in February. This is the second webinar in that series, and following on the heels of this webinar, we'll be issuing our second report. Then we have a third one on the and that will be releasing later in the year. So my partner in crime for this project is Mitch Oscar. He is Director of Programmatic and Advanced TV Strategy at USIM, and we're able to borrow part of his brain to help us really see what's going on in some of these key areas like programmatic. And in the next slide, we're just going to lay out in this research program the kinds of things that we'll be looking at, and we'll touch on some of these today, I'm sure. And it's live and interactive, so who knows where we'll end up going. We'll try to keep it fun as well as informative. But some of the questions we have undertaken in our exploration of what's going on in programmatic and local television, I'm sure we're going to touch on one or more of these in this webinar, but certainly in the full report you'll see that. So programmatic TV, compatibility with existing ways of planning and buying for different parts of the TV universe, key partnerships and initiatives, programmatic TV sales in terms of compatibility, so both the buying side and selling side compatibility. How is it going to impact pricing of local TV inventory? Good, bad, and different. There's different viewpoints and different data points around that as well. And will programmatic TV be accepted by advertising agencies? What's that going to look like? What's it already look like? What kind of experiences do we have there? And then a key part of programmatic, of course, is transitioning linear TV from its historical kind of value proposition of targeting editorial environments. You buy the TV program and the demos in those programs, to really being able to have very sophisticated tools around audience targeting. So the role of data companies becomes very significant through programmatic platforms. So just a ton of things that are impacting the whole TV business in ways that it hasn't really been impacted in recent times. So it's kind of an exciting time to take a breath and see what's going on and what might be coming up next. So in the next slide, I'm going to now turn this over to our moderator for today and our industry advisor, expert in programmatic, Mitch Oscar. So, Mitch, let me turn it over to you, and you can give a quick thumb sketch on each of our speakers as we move through this.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Patrick. So there's a list of our companies. It's alphabetical because we didn't want anyone insulted, but down the line we will do it by first name, so when people are speaking, either I will introduce them or they will introduce themselves. So rather than read each name off now, let's go to the next slide, and we will have each person introduce themselves and talk about their company. So Hamid, you're up.
Hi, thanks, Mitch. I'm Hamid Qayyum, the SVP Sales for TV Activation at 4C. For those of you that do not know 4C, we're a leading provider of analytics and marketing technology for agencies, brands, and networks. Prior to 4C, I was SVP Sales at Fourth Wall Media in the set-top box data area, and then prior to that, I co-founded Aaron Media.
Oh, and
welcome to the webinar. Sorry, guys.
Hamid, could you please talk about 4C for a second, because you didn't mention social TV, and that's really what I'd like them to know about you. Just right off, so they hear it and the question. So with each of you and
Absolutely.
the panel, please talk directly also about what it is you're contributing or your company contributes to the realm. Hamid?
Sure, thank you. So 4C has been around for the past 5 years. Claim to fame is in social advertising and data analytics using data from Facebook and Twitter to connect brands to programs and vice versa. So our customers use our data to glean insights on where people are in connecting different brands to where the TV audiences are watching TV using social data. And then we have activation platform that allows you to take that information that you've gleaned on where your audience is and actually buy media on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and Instagram.
Who's next? Oh, okay, you went in, you went out. Now, next.
Hi, Mitch. Thanks, Mitch.
There we go.
This is Kyle Folan. I am Business Development Director for Media and Publishing at Epsilon Data Solutions. Epsilon is a major data provider in all verticals and in all spaces. We are more than data, though. We are a global marketing company and a leader in turning data-driven marketing into lasting relationships. We like to think that we build the connections that bond people to the brands. Epsilon helps brands in all verticals use marketing data, technology through our platforms, and creativity to understand their customers' lifestyles, attitudes, transactions, and behavior so they can connect with them on a deeper level. Epsilon is a 30-year-old company. I've been with them for several years, and prior to joining Epsilon, I worked for 22 years doing audience development in the publishing field, working with many of the major publishers out there, and I've since morphed into a media audience development person. Thank you for having me.
Next. You've been had. Next.
Hi, I'm Barry Lowenthal from Media Kitchen. Thank you guys for having me. Media Kitchen is a full-service media agency, which means that we plan and buy media, all kinds of media, whether it's digital, online, or offline. We tap into our holding company, MDC Media Partners, to buy broadcast media, which would include TV and radio. We are looking at buying some programmatic media ourselves, and I think we'll probably talk about why I think that's a good idea as this webinar sort of unfolds. Just two things to highlight about Media Kitchen. In 2014, we were named MediaPost's Programmatic Agency of the Year, and in 2015, they named us Mobile Agency of the Year. So while we are a full-service agency, we certainly have a very strong digital core.
Thank you, Barry. Next. Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Raleigh with Place Media. Place Media is a supply-side platform, or an SSP, and we focus primarily on linear TV. And essentially what we're doing, if you're not familiar with what an SSP is doing in this space, is aggregating access to inventory from sources that include the national TV networks, the local MVPDs, or the local breaks within the national networks, and other inventory sources. And then what we do is we add audience targeting beyond just age and gender, and that we can utilize first, second, or third-party data into our platform. And then from there, we automate the execution, the campaign management, and the final reporting back to the agencies or the clients directly on that. And within the marketplace, and I'm sure we'll get into this during the course of the rest of the webinar here, but we really distinguish ourselves as an organization within the market through our access to national inventory. We probably have the most available national inventory out there, as well as from a technical standpoint, our technical integrations with the demand side. So what that essentially means is machine to machine can interact, particularly with the DSPs or demand side platforms, so that they can access the inventory that we have and utilize the data on top of it for additional audience targeting. Prior to joining Place, and Place has been around for about 3 years, I just celebrated my 1-year anniversary with Place. Prior to that, I ran a lot of sales organizations for primarily linear TV, but also when I was at Weather, I ran Weather.com and the apps, and then prior to that, other cross-platform entities. So it's been interesting for me in the year that I've been in this space to see, understanding all the different marketplaces, whether they're national or local marketplaces, and having the opportunity to meet with basically all the media owners as an SSP, as well as in my role working directly with the demand side as well. So I'm seeing both demand side and the supply side of the business, which gives me kind of an interesting window into the space.
Thank you, Chris. Who's up next? Ryan.
Hi, this is Ryan MacArthur, and I serve as the Executive Vice President at Quantum 11. My responsibilities include managing media, operations, and innovation. And previous to my agency life, I spent 10 years at Experian. Quantum 11 is an independent technology and service-based media buying agency. We manage all forms of media, offline and online, but specifically we focus on programmatic and addressable media buying across all channels.
Perfect. Nice and concise. Thank you. Who's next? Eric.
Yes, I guess I'm rounding out the introductions. Eric Mathewson, I am the founder and CEO of Wide Orbit. We've had the goal since inception to make it easier to buy and sell media. So back when you used to call programmatic B2B marketplaces or exchanges, we were focused on that target. We believe that the only way to come up with a logical solution to make this happen was to first replace the underlying system that runs large media companies. So we went out and built a traffic sales and billing system, which is the system of record that manages the programming, the spots, the credit, the finance, the accounts receivable billing, et cetera, essentially the full workflow for a sell-side ad organization. We started installing it in year 2000, to stations and nets across the U.S. We're now live in 3,300 stations and nets, where we're, again, operating their entire platform. Approximately 90% of U.S. TV station ad dollars go through our platform, about a third of cable nets, about a third of radio stations. Shortly, it'll be 50% of radio stations. We're now building connections to the buy side. We're live now with 18 DSPs to attach their demand into our supply side platform. We're trying to build a balanced marketplace, a balanced exchange, so that the interests of both parties can be met in a very efficient way. We believe that most programmatic solutions out there today are largely manual with a very light technological front end, and we are fully automated from front end to back end, all with computer software, not with quote-unquote monkeys behind the curtain. My background.
Who are you calling a monkey?
Yeah, well, that may sound disparaging, but people behind the curtain that are literally tapping between one keyboard system to another keyboard system. We believe that's a failed strategy. We do not think that's going to serve industry, and we don't think that's a long-term solution that's going to work for very long. Okay. Prior to starting Wide Orbit, I worked in equity derivatives, managed money for Kidder Peabody and Montgomery Securities.
Thank you, Eric. Next slide. So before we start asking the questions of the panelists or addressing your questions, we thought we'd like to lay a baseline, at least generically, about programmatic television. And oftentimes people talk about it as an answer or response to what the digital sector has done, and in some way that's true. But more importantly, I'd like to just address it from a TV mentality. So in the mid-2000s, there was a local issue where the local broadcaster might, WABC, for instance, might generate a 5 rating during a program, and cable would do a 0.5. So two companies, NVIDIA and Navic, came up with the idea that if they could put 10 cable networks together in the local inventory in a local market, they could have a 5 rating and be better targeted. That didn't really take off. It was ahead of its time. The traditional community didn't feel comfortable with whatever that technology, that concept might be. In 2006, the broadband ad networks such as Tremor, Yumi, Collective, Adapt TV said TV was dead. In 2007, we have what I call contextual audience networks that started out with Google TV, where they thought real-time bidding was important, and they were around. And Mirror was Navic, which was sold to Microsoft, and we all know that what Microsoft buys, they kill. And then Simulmedia has been around since that time. I call them contextual audience networks because it was the first time that at least TV people were looking at what if it's about the audience and not about the program, and not about what we would term the premium or engagement of the program, but about the specific audience. In 2011, the broadband ad network said we were only kidding, TV's not dead, and they developed what they call reach extension. Now at that time, I think they might have been at $4 or $5 billion, which was a lot for companies that were 4 or 5 years old, but television was $65 billion. So they had now TV viewing audience, so they combined whatever they knew from their data in digital with the TV viewing audience, mostly from Rentrack, which is now ComScore, and they would ask advertisers, give us your campaign schedule and we'll extend the reach. And from that, in 2013, you had companies come from many different directions into what we'd call the programmatic TV space. One would be the broadband ad networks I talked about, so Adapt TV or TubeMogul, some digital companies like The Trade Desk, some companies like Wide Orbit that have been involved in trafficking and billing, and other companies that have come from kind of the outside of it in technology like Place Media or Audience Express. And in programmatic television, we have now national campaigns, addressable campaigns, as well as local. Next slide. So when we look at this as part of the generics, well, launched in 2013, I don't know what the definition is, but I do know there's data infusion more than age and gender. I know there's automation, but ever since we stopped using gerbils to generate electricity, automation has always been involved. And there is cost efficiency, which can be defined as efficiency in pricing, as in CPMs, unit costs, or more importantly, time efficiency to understand, to target better, to use more data and integrate it. The technology, you've heard people already on the panel say SSP, DSP, DMP, trading desk. My point of view is whatever it is, if it's working for people, whether there's an arbitrage model on the supply side and they're making a lot of money, or on the demand side they're meeting their planning goals, I don't necessarily care about the acronyms for this conversation. Targetability. Well, we have national buys wherever the footprints are from the platforms that are in the national arena or SSPs. We have that. We have a higher concentration of audience as opposed to addressability, which theoretically is one-to-one, but to the household with the TV set on, with the data we have, with the national projection, there's a higher concentration of the audience we want. And then we have local, which we're going to be talking about as well, which is very specifically to a DMA, and it could be comprised hypothetically of local broadcast, MVPD or pay TV operator. In the 2-minute break, they get to sell from the cable networks. Commercial inventory, everybody's engaged. So there's national TV programs that are allowing inventory to be sold programmatically, local TV avails, whether it's broadcast or MVPDs, and even now ad-supported VOD, I understand with TubeMogul. They have relationships with Comcast. and I think other companies will soon have those same relationships to represent ad-supported VOD that both the cable operators and the telcos possess in their lineup. Commercial lengths, primarily 15s and 30s. We're not seeing many 60s yet, and sometimes there's pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll if it's engaged in the ad-supported video-on-demand world. Deployment across the country, probably 90 million homes of the 114 million homes that have TV sets. And by the way, of that, 95 million of the 114 plus million are somehow MVPD subscribers, which you have cable at 50 million, satellite at 34 or 5 million, and the telcos at 11 million. And the data sources are really terrific now because not only do we have viewing data, so the ComScore, Rentrax, the Nielsen, the set-top box, the smart TV, but we also have behavioral data that we're getting from companies like Epsilon, Experian, Axiom, TiVo, TRA. So all of this is coming together for us to understand our audience and find our audience, as opposed to purchasing programs necessarily and saying they contain an audience. Maybe we can find the audience and they happen to be in programs, television programs. Next. There's the 90 million homes. You see the breakdown of everybody who owns inventory somehow in the category is contributing. Next. Here's a schematic for people who like schematics. So you see all the players on the left-hand side. I won't read through their names, but people who are involved in our seminar are there. And you see local at the bottom. Audience network, by the way, is something that Sinclair Broadcasting is involved in, and Audience Plus is NCC and Comcast. Provantage X is ITN, and I think we know Vidya, and we certainly know Wide Orbit. We have Eric today. The inventory, everybody is contributing some form of inventory or control or experimenting in some way, whether it's a network like NBC that announces they have a programmatic platform, to Comcast that talks about local advertising, to TV station groups that do deals with Audience Express, Wide Orbit, Vidya. So everyone's doing it. Commercial lengths, 15s and 30s. In program. Now in program, that term means there used to be local advertising for MVPDs, and it might be, hey, eat at Mitch's Pizza, and it was a tacky commercial, whether the food was good or not. And now, because of all the technology, most commercials look decent and some exceptionally good. So it's in program somehow, whether it's the local break or the national. A little bit of a divergence here. So if we were looking at local programmatic, and Eric will probably speak about this later, it could be specific programs being purchased. It could be half-an-hour blocks. It could be day parts. When it's national, that contains NVPD inventory or cable network inventory, well, we see basically day parts of schedules, total schedules. We don't really see programs until after the facts or day parts by network until we get the post logs. Audience targeting, there's addressable deals going on between that we can utilize DirecTV, Dish, or Cablevision in the traditional addressable way, or it can also be in the programmatic way for digital shops with, I think, Dish and Direct. We have national, which we've talked about, local, and for measurement, rich measurement, whether it's demographic or psychographic. You see the list of companies there, and there's many more. And when there's viewing data on the right, you see between set-top box, smart TVs, panels, census, there'll be lots of data for us to learn and exploit for our clients, meaning the marketers ultimately. Next. So I think this is an apropos cartoon. Next. So the benefits and challenges. Benefits, as we've talked about, more data to inform the buy, a time efficiency to accomplish what you need, better audience targeting. Some systems offer daily reportage. Everyone offers, you do business with us for a month, you get one bill instead of 20 or 30 different bills. We see this as reach extension as well, where you can expand the number of networks you might have purchased because there's no limit as to how much money from a floor that you have to spend to do business with the network. We also talk about the inclusion of short snouts. Everyone refers to cable networks that don't have Nielsen measurement but have Rentrak ComScore measurement as long tail. I think that's a misnomer because long tail suggests that those networks are watched after everyone has watched everything else. But in fact, I think it's short snout because if it was the Eric network and people are interested in Eric, no matter how many people there are, then they'll watch him first before they watch popular entertainment. And then there's the affordability of buying top-tier networks that perhaps some marketers can't afford. Eventually, we're looking for this to bridge video across all platforms so that we can see on a screen. We can take a look at, oh, this is my programmatic, this is my linear television, my ad-supported, my broadband, my over-the-top. We're hoping that will come, and we're sure it will. Challenges. Opaque is the new transparency. We don't really see in the national realm these specific day parts by networks or programs, but we see it in aggregate, whereas locally it's much more concise. And we do get post-buy affidavits, but there's thousands upon thousands of lines. We did a deal once for $150,000, and there were 163,000 lines for us to look at. We can't replicate the campaign necessarily. We know the networks, but we don't know specifically the networks by day parts, and therefore we can't request the same meal from the same restaurant. What is the traditional buying compatibility, which we'll talk about in this seminar as well? And there is a complex proposal valuation, not necessarily by the technology, but we've always kept TV stations separate from TV networks, separate from MVPD, separate from ad-supported VOD in terms of value. Right or wrong, we've always done that in the traditional community. So what will we do when they're all combined into the same plan? Next. So now here are pictures of everyone, and we've done this on a first name basis because, as Eric said, he was wrapping it up as Wide Orbit. He picked a W when he formed a company, but now we're doing it by first name. So whenever questions are asked from me to any of the panelists and you see Barry, then you know what Barry looks like, or Chris is smiling at you. So a confession I have to make. My first question was really to Chris that said, describe one of your function. You describe one of your function as the aggregation of inventory from media partners. Please elaborate. And then all of a sudden he addressed that without knowing I was going to ask the question in his introduction. So now I'm thrown off for all my questionnaires. So I have to recalibrate. I'm buffering. And Chris, something you talked about when you said MVPD inventory, what is the difference then? There's local station, which Eric might address, but there's, and Eric might address more, but you were talking about MVPD. Do you want to just be more explicit to the audience?
Sure. So when we talk about MVPDs, we're looking at a collection of a lot of different inventory suppliers on that. So it's a combination of cable, combination of satellite, and also of the telcos as well. So that's what we're looking for, MVPD inventory. In the early days of programmatic, and programmatic really using audience targeting and automation is how I'm defining it, that was the easiest inventory to kind of find because there was a lot of it, and there was an opportunity to enhance the value for the supply side of that. So that was how a lot of people started, and it started to move from there kind of upstream to getting to national TV networks as well as the local, which I'll let Eric speak more to the local side of it at this point. But that's what I'm talking about when I mention MVPDs.
And when you talk about cable networks for a second, what type of cable networks are you talking about?
So the early days of starting to really build the inventory out there was a lot of the smaller networks that were available or making themselves available to it. As I mentioned before, I ran sales for weather, and we were an early adopter into the programmatic space. Primarily, we started on the digital side and then moved into linear. So when people started coming to us and say, we want to include your inventory into a blind pool, right? We were eager to be able to do that, again, just as an additional demand source for it. So it started off with kind of the smaller independent networks, and now as the marketplace has started to expand a bit and there's more demand out there in the marketplace, that if you're a player that owns inventory, you A, want to know what money is being spent in that, what's the marketplace, and then B, how do I participate in it? So what we've seen in recent months here is a really big switch to be able to onboard a lot more of the larger network groups. We really try to protect names of these guys because we're trying to avoid any kind of channel conflict from the direct sales force. But we've seen a much greater acceptance as the marketplace has started to build.
Thank you, Chris. Now, Eric, had Chris not answered the first question in his "Who am I?", then I would have asked you in your description, you say advertising management solutions for media companies. And how are you different from Place Media? We might know, but what about the audience? So when you talk about advertising management solutions, you're talking more than trafficking and billing. Is that correct?
Yeah, we go outside the realm of traffic and billing, but we're solving a lot of problems for clients that, frankly, have problems to solve. They ask us to solve things, we solve them for them.
But what are those?
To the programmatic section or programmatic subject, it would be great actually to roll back to slide 16, just the previous slide. And I want to just...
You can't do that.
Not able to do that?
No, we're not allowed. We only go forward in this conversation.
Well, I want to go over some of the challenges that you state here that I think are a great summary of the challenges of most of programmatic that's happening today. And obviously that you're exposing some of your experience in buying the available programmatic, which I would say is we're at the stage of programmatic that's not unlike sausage production before Upton Sinclair's book, exposing the dirty secrets of what happened in sausage factories. But basically, people are aggregating inventory from a lot of different sources that may or may not have significant value.
Hold on, Eric, but we want to talk about your company right now. We're not talking about the industry. So what specifically is Wide Orbit doing? If it's local, I hear rumors that you might do something national, but could you talk about local first? What is your company doing about, Chris talked about MVPD inventory. My understanding is your focus has been in the local arena, TV station groups and others. Is that not the case?
We started out in local television, went into local radio stations because frankly it was fairly easy for us to do that. And then in 2012 we went live with large-scale cable nets. Since then, we've won essentially every major award of any cable net, from any award of any system for traffic sales.
All programmatic. But Eric, I want to keep you on programmatic. It's about this, and we know that the company is well respected and well known in the programmatic local space, local broadcast, which I understand as an advertising person, you have made great inroads. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Again, the majority of TV stations in the U.S. are on our platform. They are slowly but surely bringing their inventory live on our programmatic platform. The same is true with the national cable nets. Again, about a third of the cable nets are on our W Traffic platform, which is the same software base as local television.
Okay, but Eric,
it allows an advertiser to target individual stations and individual half-hour blocks of programs. It is 100% transparent. You know exactly what you're buying. You know exactly what fees you are paying. There is no opacity. There is no black box as to what you are, quote-unquote, eating as a advertiser.
Okay, so Eric, just a question because I'm a little confused. I understand trafficking and billing, you have 80, 90%. In the programmatic of all the TV stations that are out there, just for the audience, we just want to keep that a little separate. Do you have 90% of the 1,600 stations out there, or are you meaning in the combination of trafficking, billing, and what you're trying to do in programmatic, you're at 90%?
Yeah, we haven't quoted a figure as to how many folks are live on our programmatic platform at station or network level. but we are reaching currently about 85% of the U.S. It's about 26 out of the top 50 DMAs to date.
Okay. Barry, question for Barry. What has motivated your agency to include programmatic TV strategies as part of your media campaigns? If you are.
If we are. So, you know, Media Kitchen probably spends about 60% to 65% of our billings in digital. And for us, when TV started talking about moving, when we could start buying TV programmatically, it became another way for us to just shift dollars around. I'm hearing an echo, Mitch.
I don't hear it on my end. Can Patrick, the technologist, help?
Yeah.
I'm trying out, Barry.
Yeah, just make sure your speakers are muted, Barry, then just continue.
Okay.
Please
so,
continue. Yes.
Yeah, so we've done a really good job about learning how to buy media programmatically. This is much better, by the way. Learning how to buy media programmatically, and we were an early pioneer of buying all kinds of desktop inventory, mobile inventory, so display, video, social, so on and so forth programmatically. And when we heard that you could buy TV programmatically, we were really excited, because for us that became just another way of using automation to buy media. And we were very excited about the promise of all media moving to a programmatic platform. So if we can buy data, if we can use data to buy media, and when we're using sort of like one DSP and managing frequency caps, that's a very exciting sort of promise for us. Unfortunately, that's not the situation that we're in right now, and I think it's going to be a long time before we are in that situation. We recently did a programmatic buy with one of the suppliers that you had listed early on in the presentation. And the way that we executed that campaign really was calling them up on the phone and having them put a schedule together for us. And I think what probably made it programmatic was that they could use different data to allow us to buy audiences rather than just buy straight demographics. And I think in that situation, what made the buy a programmatic buy was really the audience promise that we can buy in traditional programmatic channels. So just like we can buy display programmatically using audience targeting, we could buy television using audience targeting, and that sort of made the buy programmatic.
All right, then let me get Ryan to chime in right now for Quantum 11. Ryan, you guys involved in programmatic TV? Ryan? Oh, no.
Sorry about that. I was trying to keep mute. Yeah, absolutely. So, first and foremost for us, it's an opportunity to lean in and be ahead of the curve. Primarily we want to take advantage of the opportunities that won't otherwise be available in the space as it matures. So, some of those opportunities include, the opportunity to utilize online data and take it offline and vice versa. The opportunity for data-driven audience planning, more efficient targeting, and in-flight optimizations. A lot of this, it's enabling our clients to reach a specific target audience, and ultimately which is yielding to better business outcomes. Down the road, what we're really excited about is the opportunity to execute integrated cross-platform campaigns, and where we can utilize the offline and the online, in both directions.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Now, talking about data, which is so important, Amit, social data and mixing it up with television and helping us target better for the people who are chatting about what we're doing, the people who are watching, and the marketers. You want to talk about the value of social and TV and your data?
Yeah, and one point of clarification as well. We're also a DSP, cross-platform DSP. So data is a very important part of that, right? So when you look at some of the things that you were talking about, we bring a planning element where we take a database of about 1.5 billion users on social media, and then we tie that in with our Teletrax network, which is world's largest TV monitoring network, which covers all 210 DMAs in the USA. with about 150 cable networks plus all the local broadcasters. We collect all the advertisements that run across all those channels. So what we can do is we can combine that data we're collecting from TV delivery and across social, and put together a database of engagement data. You use that to actually do the media buy, which again you can do through our platform, and we're partnering with Wide Orbit to get inventory and other TV SSPs. And then on the back end of that, we also provide measurement. So you can say, did I hit my target audience? If not, where was my target audience, right? So we bring data in from set-top box and smart TV folks to kind of let you know where your tune-in was. So what that allows you to do is complete the cycle. You can plan, you can buy, you can measure across a SaaS-based platform. So like Barry was saying, you don't have to place a phone call and say, hey, can you place this buy using data? You can actually place the buy using a SaaS platform. So this allows you to tie everything together from a hands-on perspective. You don't have to wait till 9 in the morning when office opens to place a call and do your buy. You can do it through a platform.
So thank you. No, thank you. Eric, can you elaborate on how 4C social TV data and activity will help advertisers on your platform achieve their goals?
Sure. I mean, 4C obviously has a great rep in making their significant progress in social and search. And so applying a lot of that same technology, a lot of that same targeting data, and applying that via set-top, satellite boxes, et cetera, and other available data sources, applying that and using Wide Orbit as the execution engine makes for a very efficient buy. And again, we have a live TUI API with 4Cs. We're very excited to seeing agency clients start to use that linkage to buy more efficiently.
Okay, and Kyle, when we were discussing how people are using your data, because you, Axiom, Experian, or the TiVo, TRA, we kind of look at on behavioral direction, you said that you found that your advertisers were more so coming to you and being curious as opposed to the agencies. Not that the agencies weren't curious, but you noticed advertisers, your marketers, were coming to you. Can you elaborate on why that is? Because that's a little different than what we think in the industry.
Yeah, sure, Mitch. You know, we work with so many of the advertisers that are on TV through other channels in their omni-channel marketing, and they've been using Epsilon data to build targeted models for their direct mail campaigns or their target display campaigns. And, you know, we use our Total Source Plus, which has 1,900 data points potentially on each household to build models for them or to do straight selects. And it just became a natural extension that, you know, how can our data be involved in TV? So we started out in the whole media space. We're doing tune-in campaigns. We're building audience. And really it stemmed from one of our audience tune-in clients who said, you know, you're doing a great job with this digital models that you're using. The data is providing us a 30% lift. How can we get that data into a programmatic so we can include TV in the mix? So we're starting to hear that a lot, and that's why my goal is to start reaching out to the platforms and the end users to make them aware that our highly transactional data is going to be available on these platforms.
Thank you. So we have data that's part of it, targetability that's part of it, platforms are being built out as exemplified by Wide Orbit and Place Media. Chris, so what do you think are some of the impediments for national advertisers and media companies to jump into this programmatic TV space?
Well, I think from a national standpoint, I mean, oftentimes they're buying national footprints that, you know, we have a long-established ecosystem of buying national television, including upfronts, et cetera. And the question always is, you know, what are you solving for? So if you're just looking at price, most of these guys have legacy pricing and, you know, have a long-established upfront deals, which I call PMPs, or private marketplaces, are already established. So what are you really looking to accomplish? So we're seeing a lot of supplemental buys. I think as it was pointed out earlier, whether it was Barry, I think might have mentioned that a lot of people are looking to do cross-platform and be able to, the clients are looking for the same kind of targeting, same kind of flexibility, same kind of reporting, and ultimately an attribution model that they're seeing on the digital side of the house. How do they bring that into linear television? In particular, a lot of the major advertisers, the bulk of their dollars are still in linear television. So there's still some, when talking about impediments, one of the biggest impediments is really the issue on attribution with linear TV today. With the exception of addressable, it's still some challenges that way. That's probably, I would say, the one single largest impediment to national guys utilizing programmatic.
Okay, thank you. Let me get Eric in impediments to jump into the local TV realm. What do you think, Eric?
Well, I think probably the biggest impediment is just 40, 50 years of buying the exact same way. So the folks that have been buying local television haven't changed in a long time, and they're having to learn a new way. Conversely, obviously, local television has not been a profitable business area for agencies, arguably forever. It just takes too many people to buy local television. So there's real value there, just like there's real value in networks, and taking the best of both media forms, using geo-targeting where it's appropriate, buying a natural reach where it's appropriate, using local in an unwired way to augment or replace a national campaign also can make financial sense. Historically, you couldn't do that before programmatic because it just took too many people to pick up the phone to 400 stations in 150 DMAs.
So you brought up an interesting point about culture. So Barry and Ryan, Barry, go first because we're doing it alphabetically. What about the cultures between the digital and forward-thinking people looking at technology and being comfortable with it, and the traditional people, as Eric points out and says, well, for 40 or 50 years they've been doing it this way, so their transition is a lot tougher. Barry, you mentioned you with a holding company, I think MDC Partners. What are you seeing there between the traditional people and your people who seem to be well-versed across all disciplines?
So, before we go there, I just want to kind of address what I see as some of the impediments.
Okay.
When we've looked at buying programmatic television, because we buy a lot of video programmatically, but when we're talking about buying inventory that is typically supplied through the cable and broadcast networks, the issue is really scale. It's about getting, the inventory that we need at the scale we need it with as much transparency as possible. We're not seeing that. It's still easy to get all of that by going direct. I wish that was different, but I think that the networks in particular are being motivated by fear and pricing protection, and they worry that they can't get the same kind of pricing that they could get direct if they make that inventory available programmatically. Eventually, I think the technology will be so easy, both on the supply side and on the demand side, that they will be persuaded to make more and more inventory available. But for the time being, I think that's been a really big impediment.
Well, let me, Barry, hold on for a second and keep the thought. But Ryan, can you follow up on what Barry's saying? And is that your experience? Is that your thinking?
Yeah, I agree. Inventory aggregation and having an open ecosystem is going to be critical as we move forward. I think the problem is when you try and apply a data-driven approach from starting with a large universe, it's a lot easier to do that and get down to a small targeted audience. But when we're starting from a smaller pool of households to begin with, it's difficult to do any planning. But I think it will evolve. I think if you look at the programmatic side, all that happened. There is some devolving going into back away from an open ecosystem on the programmatic side today. But I think ultimately it's going to happen. I think some other things that need to happen is that the content and the distribution deals that have been negotiated that limit the MVPDs and other partners to 2 minutes those need to be redone so we can open up more inventory in that area as well.
Okay, and then Barry, go back and address the cultural issue then, if there is one.
So from our standpoint, our job as media planners and buyers is to aggregate audiences, serve them a paid message, and hopefully persuade somebody to make a sale. That's our job. I'm happy to aggregate an audience any way I can. I would love, technology is very much the core of how Media Kitchen goes to market. So if I could use programmatic buying platforms to buy my media, that would be I'm predisposed to doing that. If there is a role for television on the plan right now, then I reach out to MDC Media Partners to do that. And we have a very good collaborative relationship. So for the time being, they're going to be buying my television. If I could buy the media, the television inventory, programmatically using a demand-side platform, for instance, then I'll buy it myself because I know how to use those tools. So when I have to pick up the phone and call the networks directly, or call one of the suppliers that you listed on your sheet earlier, we'll probably reach out to MDC Media Partners. When I can do it in a fully automated way, I'll do it myself.
Okay, and Ryan, culturally?
You're asking about the digital and traditional cultures, correct? The collaboration
that's
there?
Correct. Only because
Okay.
Eric brought it up, and I want to show respect to Eric.
Gotcha. I think it's somewhere with that I would think all agencies are working towards while everything's evolving so quickly. Every time you get either traditional or digital side up to speed on another side, things are moving so quickly that it makes it to be very difficult. If it wasn't such a moving target, it would probably be a lot easier and happen a lot faster. But there's language differences out there. And a lot of cross-media translations. We have CPMs on the digital side, and on the traditional side, you're working to GRPs and TRPs. So, we're doing a lot of that training. I think that we've made a lot of movement over the years, but I still think there's more to go. But, looking at the programmatic TV side, I would say there's more common ground than ever. There's people on the TV side understand certain aspects of the programmatic TV much better than the digital side, and so what I think that's creating is a collaboration and interest on both sides to learn and understand this more so than there ever has been in the past.
Okay, now as we're rounding out the hour, a question, and you guys have been addressing this, so we'll do this, alphabetically again. But what do you think could be done to improve the programmatic TV deliverable in the future? And you've been mentioning this, so we're just going to kind of go around, starting with Chris. What do you think? Name some things you've been talking about already, and you've listened to the panel. What would improve it?
Sure. I think first and foremost, I have to respectfully disagree with Barry's sense of the amount of inventory in the marketplace. We've got a ton of inventory, not just us, but other folks in the space here that's available. And probably one of my biggest challenges is that the dollars aren't big enough coming into programmatic TV. I've got an awful lot of national distribution from top networks that are out there, but it's hard when I've got small amount of budgets coming in or the dollar volume coming in to access the inventory that is available. So I would just challenge the amount of inventories out there. I think people have talked about that for a long time, but I would challenge you, and there are other folks, again, in the space, not just Place Media, that have access to a lot of inventory out there. So I would challenge that. As far as things coming in, I think the understanding in regards to true, the way I look at it, true programmatic in the sense of really using data, I think a lot of people are utilizing this as an efficiency play on the primary age gender demographic versus what I think it really should be is the efficiency on the strategic targets. So those left-handed women that drive luxury SUVs, right? That's where it really becomes more efficient. It's not driving down price to the supplier, but it's improving the efficiency for the advertiser to reach that specific target. So I would just encourage people to really say, what I'm really trying to do is utilize data to better target. And that's really the true promise of programmatic. I think that would really drive things further as opposed to focusing on efficiencies on age gender, which, you're not really going to solve that problem.
Okay, Barry, point, counterpoint. Do you want to argue with Chris, or do you want to go into what do you think could improve programmatic TV deliverable in the future?
I think I'm going to go into the latter, and I welcome a follow-up meeting separately with Chris to see what kind of inventory he has available.
Okay, so what about improving programmatic TV deliverable in the future? You've mentioned a couple of things. Why don't you give the highlight of that, please?
Sure. So as far as I know, there isn't a solution for me to go into, let's say, my DSP, point and click and develop a TV schedule or develop a schedule using television inventory and execute that at scale. I haven't seen that yet. and I would love to see that kind of integration. I don't want to have to call lots of different SSPs in order to put a schedule like that together.
Well, and Barry, Eric's talking about creating that, because I think you mentioned earlier. Eric, do you want to jump in for that?
Yeah, I would say that we absolutely do have that today. You know, our reach is a subset of the overall marketplace, but it is in the billions of dollars realm. It's not small numbers that, well, what's available. But again, I'd love to get Barry's eyes on our platform and see where we can improve and where what works and what's working for them. The other big areas I think that need improvement in general are again transparency. You know, people need to know what they're paying, what they're buying. There should be great clarity for the benefit of the advertisers. They need to know what's working for them, and it can't be opaque, or else they're never really going to figure out what's ringing the cash register.
Okay, and Rick, we're probably going to go 3 minutes over if we can. I'm still going to push it. Kyle, anything that's going to improve the deliverable of programmatic TV in the future?
Well, I agree with the comment about focusing on the strategic mission of the ad, looking for, as he was quoted, left-handed women who drive SUVs. You know, data sets can provide those people who are driving those SUVs and finally target it. So I think it's getting beyond that demographics, which is going to make these campaigns better. And I think it has to be proven out once people are testing these, marketers are testing these, and they're successful, then more marketers will flood into them as they see it being, you know, the ROI improving on it.
Okay, Hamid.
Yeah, so, you know, both Barry and Eric, actually everybody on the panel, we should all get together, because one of the big things that we're looking at here is we are a DSP that is automating this process. So, Barry, you do have a place you can come to where you can get access to inventory that Eric has available, and Chris, love to talk to you about getting your inventory in our system as well. But you know, the big thing is we have agencies that use our product today. 6 of the top 7 trading desks use our product to buy social media, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, LinkedIn, and they're very excited about having the opportunity to buy local off that same platform. A lot of these guys are building this cross-platform desk, and they're very excited about the opportunity to say, hey, I can buy Facebook and hit that left-handed SUV driver on Facebook, but also be able to buy that inventory in Birmingham to hit that same target, right?
Perfect.
So that's what we're driving for.
Okay, so that's a driving metaphor with the women in SUVs. And Ryan, bring it on home.
You know, I just say that when you take a look at the data, I think, you know, we are driving towards a targeting efficiency, but, you know, you have to take cost into effect, and as you get more narrow and granular in your targeting, that's going to increase your cost, and so you have to find that happy medium between the two. And, you know, that's where scale comes into place, where less of those parameters are going to impact what we're doing with more scale.
Thank you, Ryan. Now, I'm going to turn it back to Rick, and I want to apologize to the group because I'm listening to myself talk and moderate this, and I'm sounding like a talk show host, so I apologize. It's not my personality. Rick, go forward, and let's see if there's any questions or anything business you want to accomplish.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Mitch, you have a wonderfully warm personality. Thank you so much. And Barry, Chris, Eric, Ahmed, Kyle, and Ryan, thank you so much for your awesome answers and kind of rolling the punches back and forth here. So we had a couple of questions actually come in from the audience, and we're kind of pressing up against time. But let me just pick one. Looking ahead, what we need to do is do something with attribution or some sort of outcome from the campaign. So it's efficiency, it's targeting. You gentlemen have spoken, I think, eloquently and powerfully to some of the challenges there. But in linear TV, that opaqueness that you spoke to, Mitch, I mean, that's kind of the thing that continues to be a challenge for linear TV, broadcast, cable, telco, satellite, trying to show that attribution since they're essentially offline media. So that was one of the questions that came in that kind of ties together some of the other things that I think you've actually all commented on. But I do encourage the audience, if you do have questions, that you think of after we break off here, please go ahead and send them to us. On the next slide, you can just send those to me, and I'll field those to the appropriate people, and we can post that back up. So Patrick, if you can go to the next slide, that would be helpful. Then I wanted to also indicate that this is the second in a series of 3 we're doing for these programmatic webinars, and for this particular webinar, the group of industry experts have had in the panel, along with Mitch today, we've collected some of the thoughts that I've shared today and more in a report that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. The first report's available. We're making that available for the webinar audience today for no charge. It's free. You can see the URL down the bottom right, so please look at that. It covers programmatic market sizing and projections, strategy, technology reviews, client briefings. That's generally what we're going to be up in this report series. So I definitely invite you to take a look at that first report and give us some feedback. What other things do you want us to look into for you? And the second report will be coming out soon. Okay, and then just moving into the last slide, again, I just want to say thank you to everybody involved with today. We've got our industry experts that did a wonderful job giving some really good insights and information, not only into what has been and what is now, but where they're headed and where they see the marketplace headed. Great baseline to set some challenges and some opportunities for us all. So thank you again, Mitch, for awesome moderating, and for our expert panel, thank you, and for our audience. Really appreciate your participation. If you do have questions, there's ways to reach me, my email, my Twitter handle. So we look forward to continuing this conversation, and everybody here will we'll keep you in touch with what we're doing next in this area of programmatic. So the email is rduc@BIA-Kelsey, and you'll be hearing from us more soon. At this point, Patrick, I'm going to turn the program back to you.
Thanks a lot, Rick. And I'd like to thank everybody for attending. And as a reminder on the way out, we do have a quick survey if you guys can fill out and let us know what you thought of the webinar today. And as I stated earlier, we recorded the webinar, and look out for an email from BIA-Kelsey tomorrow with the on-demand webinar, as well as a link of the PDF of the slide deck. So appreciate your time, everybody, and have a nice day.
Thanks.
Thank you.